name is Eric Bernal. I teach at A. Philip Randolph Campus High School in Harlem, New York City. And I teach special education science for the past 3 years, our urban agriculture elective, science elective. It's a full year-long course and 2 semesters. And they do a lot of hands-on labs and field studies. So they do a spring and a fall project. And yeah, we do all the growing, the agriculture right in class. We work with 3 different types of hydroponic systems, and we can grow quite a bit, about 140 plants, crops. To be honest, it was really you. Um, you were a major influence. I didn't really know about permaculture prior to meeting you, but um, I realized once I knew what permaculture was, I realized that I had been doing. But yeah, I mean, I've always, for most of my adult life, have been really into sustainability and local native plant gardening, and I'm an artist by default, so design and gardening going hand in hand, plus sustainability equals permaculture. So was right up my alley. So that was easy for me to find a way to integrate it with the urban agriculture curriculum, which my principal, thankfully gave me the freedom to create the curriculum as I wished. In terms, I think, for the initiatives that the Department of Education wants to, put in place in respect to climate change, there's a lot of initiatives, programs that are trying to uh, curtail or reduce energy consumption, doing more things to get students aware about this world problem that we're having and to find possible solutions. So, I mean, permaculture is pretty much defining a lot of these issues. It's one solution, but in permaculture design, you're coming up with solutions in many different angles. And I think that it's a solid education and sustainability and design, if for students to really think about what elements to incorporate in a specific garden space. I think to kind of think about all these different angles, I think is really, really key. It's an important skill that can be used for so many different trades and you know fields of study, I believe, not just gardening, horticulture, design, but many different things. Kind of tied to to my last answer, I think a lot of it has to do with the, students like learning about what is the problem, first of all, what is it that is happening, and to let them think about kind of giving them the toolbox, right? That toolbox where they kind of see what is out there to kind of um, improve certain situations or how to make things a little bit better, in terms of like considering you know ecosystems and um the changing climate and environment, trying to adapt to these changes that are happening. And I think that, for students to really kind of pull that out, to learn it for themselves and try to see how they can come up with solutions in a space, I think that that is like the key to their education and what they can gain. To think that once they know these things, it makes them more conscious about their actions, and hence environmental stewardship, that they will take care of our ecosystems, our environment, and maybe even like step beyond their community and do something even on a larger scale. I think that this is something that can inspire them. And I know for myself, because, I mean, I only focus like maybe a total of like 2 weeks of my
Mhm.
curriculum to permaculture, but in those 2 weeks, I see the benefits and the change that happens in students. I think it helps. I think it definitely is a tool that um allows them to kind of see things more clearly. I do notice that even though the I try to design the curriculum of my urban agriculture class always with sustainability in mind. When we do get to the permaculture unit, that there are so many things that they didn't really grasp that I noticed. And I work with mostly upperclassmen who, have pretty much already gone through most of their fundamental education, or at least, approaching the end of it. And there's still so many things that students at that age level still, haven't grasped in terms of like, what happens to litter, or what the slope of land can do, or, a manicured lawn versus one that's like wild and native.
Mhm.
These kinds of things are some things that they don't really grasp. But I think that after we go through this whole permaculture design um
Mhm.
unit, they start to really see those things a lot more clearly. And they use that newfound education to incorporate the elements into their new design. Because just like we did our first time that we partnered up, I
Mhm.
make them do something, from scratch, and just like let your imaginations go wild. And then, we revisit these designs and try to see, okay, where did we not include or think about those ethics, people care, earth care, fair share, where how can we really use and value diversity, or biodiversity. Those are the things that I think that I wanted them to really get from a get-go. But it really is the permaculture unit that really kind of like highlights it. I think it's probably a better way to describe it. The difference, is just incredible, night and day. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm amazed at how much they get out of it and how much they get into it. I can't say 100% of the kids could, but that's always the case, like struggle to get some students to, even come to school. But
Yeah.
with a lot of kids though, they're really engaged with it, and I see that they take a lot out of the permaculture unit. When you kind of look at the, permaculture design project, right away, you would not really associate it necessarily with science, because I think science mostly has this kind of investigative component that, you know, that really is like how we track students like learning, specifically with labs. But in a way, you can kind of see this as a lab, because they're investigating themselves about how to solve problems, and so and this is how you can kind of tie it to STEM subjects, because it looks like an art project, like some fun art project that, they're just going to design this space. You give them like a blank canvas and you say, here, start designing. But when they're actually, you giving them resources that they're investigating themselves, kind of illustrating the problems, I should say, and letting them kind of try and figure it out for themselves. And then they kind of can explain what their rationale is, and in their own way. So yeah, perfectly tied to STEM. But like right off the bat, like if you were just to kind of see a permaculture design project, maybe most people would say, oh, this is not really science, but there's a lot. I mean, you can say there's like engineering, there's botany, there's um chemistry, there's a lot going on there. So it's not, I wouldn't say conventional in the traditional sense of STEM subjects, but it's, I think, aligned in so many ways. I mean, to be honest, I mean, I feel like the the DOE needs to like buy into it. They need to, they really need to see its value
Mhm.
and pressure principals to kind of make it part of the school curriculum, because it really it comes down from the higher up, like, as teachers, we have so much influence, there's so much that we can do. And yes, we can kind of like put in a word, but the principal of each school reports to someone else that, is making decisions for all of us. So I feel like I'm also like struggling with this in terms of sustainability initiatives that the Department of Education wants to enforce in schools all around the city. However, like there is no like accountability given to the principals to make sure that they're enforcing on things like simple as recycling, like if that's not enforced, then it's like nobody's buying into it, nobody's turning off the lights, or nobody's using, turning things off when they're not using them. Just those things are frustrating for me, especially because I am the sustainability coordinator for my school. But I feel like I don't really have the true support of the entire faculty. Maybe many of them have the, are uh, sustainably conscious, but maybe, like most people are just trying to like survive day to day. They're not really thinking about these things. I should be making a bigger deal of it, but I feel like personally, like my principal is not quite 100%, into it. But if I feel like the higher ups in the DOE say permaculture design is key to getting our students to understand how climate change, how to adapt to climate change, how to possibly come up with solutions at a local and maybe even national level or global level. These are great ways that we can incorporate into maybe engineering or I don't, for a lot of electives, for sure. I think that you can kind of put it in so many fields of study, like you had mentioned, and maybe it could be part of humanities, like a humanities type of core elective course. I can see that happening. But, personally, I'm a little biased to science, so I would love it to just be part of a science elective. But yes, I feel like the Department of Education needs to understand and value permaculture design and what that can offer student growth, and how, it crosses multiple disciplines, you know. DOE wants, I mean, they're promoting these climate change initiatives. Like they
Mhm.
want it part of the school already, but I don't know if they're really thinking outside of the box. Permaculture is thinking about the bigger picture and how, and really to kind of educate every individual, child with really to give them a clear idea of what's going on, what are we doing, how are we going to try to get out of this problem or make it better or adapt to it. But yes, of course, the DOE just needs to, they need to kind of wake up. I think that in the end, it could create a better school community, that students are more respectful of their local environment. I feel that many of our students in New York City are disconnected. You know, we are, I am very proud to say that New York City is a very green city in terms of we have a lot of trees and parks and um, I've traveled around the world and for a big city, we're pretty green. But, you know, people here are just really trying to, you know, I guess like survive and live life like through all the obstacles of like that come with poverty and um family dysfunction. But I think that, permaculture is something that can kind of make people connected back to like things necessarily like outside of oneself, right? Because we're part of this larger environment that most of us, unless you're kind of guided to that, most of us are not really, I think, going to search for it in ourselves. So kind of like think that it's a way to kind of like open a door, like for students to kind of like be more interconnected with the environment, to learn about like what is the consequence of me. Many of our students like blatantly throw trash on the street, so it's just like those things are just a sign of like complete disconnect. They're just not thinking about what are the consequences of me doing this. So I feel like it is something that can help with overall like stewardship, like making better citizens. I probably would have like maybe taken off like a lot sooner. I think I was kind of a late bloomer. I didn't really get into gardening or plants, like even care about them until I met my significant other, who had a garden that I was, because we were hanging out all the time, I went to help and just kind of went to help and do a few things. But, you know, working there in the garden, kind of like I started to become fascinated with the life cycle of, seeing things and the ecosystems that existed. And that, that was not until my 20s. So my late 20s, I should say. So I feel like if I maybe had been pre-exposed to permaculture principles, design earlier in my education, I think probably I would have been flying by now, just doing so many things. It just didn't really realize, the importance of so many things, and then, because I started to garden and do all these things, work with plants and, start to do plant science on my own, like propagation and starting to observe under a microscope that I, and learn about environmental factors and the consequences of having certain plants versus others and all these things, just kind of like already been doing permaculture. I just didn't realize it. I've always been about like trying to be as sustainable as possible in our garden. So like, collecting rainwater, getting solar panels, and so all these things that I had done already before I even knew what permaculture was or that it existed for that matter. I just, so I feel that that early education in permaculture would have been wonderful for a person like me who always kind of gravitated towards like the environment, forest, like it's something that is always calling my name.